How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yep.
Excellent. Yes, I'm doing well. So thank you so much for coming on here. This is such an important topic. I know many of us are going to benefit from it. And it is not something we think about, but the smallest things help. And I think that it would definitely change our view on food, what we can do with it, the difference that we can make, the small changes every day that are able to add to the food security and sustainability here in the Bahamas. And I love that banner in the back,
Thank
definitely
you.
representing for Creative Nassau and also UNESCO,
Hmm.
which is deeply connected to Creative Nassau and something that they have done that was historic,
Thank you.
very historic for us here in the Bahamas. And so, in another 2 minutes, we are going to get into it. So, Mrs. Burnside, how is your day? How is everything going?
Oh, fine. I had a visit from about 20 school children from all the way down west who had never been to the gallery before, as well as some of
Oh,
their chaperones. So they had a wonderful time. It was the Junkanoo Jitney tour that's just starting up. And they are going to be stopping regularly at Dungalik, and the students are really enjoying it. They're outside making Jonkanu headpieces, and then they come into the gallery to learn a little bit about Bahamian art, and they go over to the craft cottage. Very important. Some of them were actually shopping for Mother's Day on Sunday, which is
oh,
nice. Yeah,
yeah,
everybody brought
good.
their couple little dollars, which was quite nice. And so we had a really good time there. And then we also had a group of visitors who came with another bus that happened to be passing by. And so they saw some of the artwork as well, not realizing that we have all this beautiful art here in the country. So it was a very rewarding day.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that mix of like locals and internationals both
Mhm.
benefiting from Bahamian art,
Right.
right here in the Bahamas. And it's not the type of thing they normally hear about. But the great
Hmm.
thing was not only did they appreciate it, but they also saw the value because they were looking for
Right.
things that they could purchase. And, I know my mom would
Hmm.
love this. And
Right.
yeah, it's really nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
is great.
we had another group yesterday too, school children as well. So they were also looking for Mother's Day gifts. So that was nice for the craft cottage. And the craft cottage has beautiful things there.
Yes, yes, they do. Amazing work. Lovely pieces of art. And so, everyone, we are going to get started. Welcome to Vibration, where we empower individuals to speak their distinct truths, passions, and personal message on a global online stage. I'm your host, Michelle McDonald, also known as Authentically Michelle, passionate foodie, author, and entrepreneur. And tonight, our topic is striving for increased food sustainability and security in the Bahamas. We have an amazing guest tonight. She knows so much about this topic, and she's going to be able to share that with us. Mrs. Pamela Burnside holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, and in Fashion and Textiles from St. Martin's School in London, England. Pam is a Bahamian cultural advocate. She's the owner and manager of Dungalik Studios Art Gallery, a creative exhibition space and fine art resale store founded in the 1970s with her husband, the late Jackson Burnside III, to expose the world to the unique elements of Bahamian art and culture. Pam is also a founding member and secretary of Transforming Spaces, a registered nonprofit organization that hosts Bahamian art tours. She's also the president of Creative Nassau, a nonprofit community organization which in 2014 was one of the first in the region to secure membership for the city of Nassau to be designated as a city of crafts and folk art in the prestigious UNESCO Creative Cities Network, which is comprised of 246 cities in over 50 countries. Creative Nassau's motto is to celebrate and promote Bahamian art, culture, and heritage from the inside out. She and Vice President Patricia Glinton Michaelis also host a weekly show on Island 102.9 FM. Mrs. Burnside, welcome to the stage tonight.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be speaking with you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. So, food security and sustainability are two topics that are near and dear to my heart. And that is because I understand the value and importance of food, not just to everyday life, but to every individual here on the planet, and also the access of it to all. Can you tell us what was the moment that inspired you to create the Food for Thought 2 for 2 initiative? And why do you feel it is urgent at this time?
Well, I was listening to the news in February, and I saw this news clip saying that the Bahamian Minister of Agriculture, was leading a 19-man fact-finding delegation to Dubai, where he had been invited to speak as at the inaugural food summit there and the World Expo. And I said to myself, this is totally astonishing, because my immediate reaction was, why do they have to travel all the way across the world to get advice from foreign, when we as a country have a strong heritage of being able to feed ourselves? It didn't make any sense, and I needed it to make sense. And to date, I still have not heard about any earth-shattering reports or advice resulting from the trip. I don't know if someone else, or maybe they're going to tell us later, but what I do know is earth-shattering is, and frightening, in fact, is that the Bahamas imports nearly 90% of its food products, 90%. And 80% of that comes from the United States. And of course, all Bahamians know all about American brands and franchises and fast foods and whatever. And the United States Department of Agriculture reported in 2019 that nearly $620 million in foodstuffs was imported into the Bahamas. 620 million. So there definitely is an urgent need to find solutions to these problems, and we need to do it locally, and we need to do it creatively, which is why Creative Nassau decided, we wanted to start this initiative just to make people think. That's, one of the roles that we do, is to just put things out there to make people ask questions, to think about what we need to do, and to find out how we can do it for ourselves, because we have to be independent instead of dependent. And if we continue to focus on foreign, well, we're going to be dependent on them, and we're right in a serious situation right now. So, everybody has to eat. It is a crucial issue. And so it affects every living creature on the planet. And so if we don't organize this basic need, then we're in trouble.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate the fact that you created this initiative. As you stated, just getting persons to think, how can I do things differently? How can I make a difference through what I purchase, how I source? And I think that it is a really impactful way to get persons to participate a lot more. And I guess in a sense, somewhat to open your eyes, because some things we're not as familiar with. And so this gives us an opportunity to be able to have a change of perspective in a positive way, and see how we can be a part of that process. So for those who are not familiar with the terms of food security and sustainability, can you provide a definition, and also why is it important in every society?
Okay, well, as we said, food is a basic necessity, because without food and water, we will not live. And food security really looks at the fact that, each state each country has to have a reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious, big word there, nutritious food that meets
Yes.
an individual's dietary needs. And that means that, you're trying to resist hunger. We don't want people to be hungry. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, hunger is directly related to the degree of poverty that you have in your country and your community. So we know that poverty and limited money to buy food is a problem, period. And nutritious food specifically is a bigger problem. And the Bahamas, of course, as I said, we have lots of fast food franchises. Our lifestyle has changed. You would see when I was growing up, my mother made all of her children sit at the breakfast table every morning before going to school, and we had a hot breakfast. And we could not go out the house until we'd eaten our breakfast. And that was grits and something. Every day was something
Yes.
different. But she said, how are you expected to learn if you don't have, if you're hungry? And that
Yes.
really does make sense. But nowadays you find that parents don't cook breakfast. They drive to a fast food franchise and they pick the food up, pass it over to their children in the back seat, and they eat on their way to school. So, that has been a change. Number one, because we have cars in order to drive. Number two, because there are food franchises that we can go to. But that has a direct problem when it comes to food, because most of these
Yes.
foods are high fat, they have high salt, they have high sugar contents, and the nutrients are limited. And these bad eats then are also exacerbated from lack of exercise, because we had to walk to school. After we finished that breakfast, I was in St. John's. I walked to school for the beginning of school. We walked back to school after lunch, and then we walked home. So we had to walk to school 4 times a day. So that exercise was an automatic part of the way that we were living. So when we talk about food sustainability now, we're talking about generating food at a productivity level to maintain the human
Mm-hmm.
population. So people need enough food to stay alive and to have let's say a nutritious way of being, but we know that that is not the case all around the world. But sustainable food production is fundamentally grounded on the availability, of course, of fertile land. You have to have land if you
Yes.
want to grow food. You have to have water if you want to grow food. You have to have nutrients. The soil has to be rich enough in order for the food to grow properly. And you have to have an adequate climate. And it also relates, as you said, to the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, which were started by UNESCO, and they comprise 17 activities for the whole world to try and work towards the year 2030. Sorry. And food relates to seven of these 17 sustainable development goals. Number one, no poverty. Number two, zero hunger. Number three, good health and well-being. Number six, clean water and sanitation. Number 13, climate action. Number 14, life below water. And number 15, life on land. So you can see that so much of this is involved in our state of being, because that's what the sustainable development goals are all about. How are we going to live on this planet for the future? So food is directly correlated to the environment, and we have to protect that environment fiercely. Imports, as those ridiculous figures that I quoted, imports means that we are dependent on foreign. We don't have the food here. And the 2008 financial crisis made these issues crystal clear. And of course, COVID-19 is a reality, and that has made things even more clearer. And if we don't wake up and, like you said, open our eyes, see what we're looking at, which is an expression that we use all the time in creative Nassau, we're going to be in trouble. And of course, when you talk about imports, of course, the costs are going to multiply exponentially, because you're going to have to think of shipping, you're bringing those things into
Yes.
the country, you have supply chain delays, which we have already experienced. We have dependence. If the ships don't come in, we're in trouble. And of course, freshness is compromised because of course the food is just being shipped for such a long amount of time, so it's not fresh. And of course, climate change is a huge reality, and certainly for our small island developing states and here in the Bahamas, because we are right in the hurricane belt, and science has shown and climate change is showing us that the storms are strengthening, and we have attested to that through our recent storms and definitely through Hurricane Dorian. And COVID-19, again, is a problem with supply chains, which are also horrific. And now we have the Ukraine war. So, I don't understand why we're not getting sense from all of these issues that are staring us right in the face. We need to wake up.
Yes, and you have said quite a lot on how the initiative is connected to food security and sustainability, all of the different aspects of it, a lot of things to keep in mind. So would you then state that the initiative is really about reconsidering what we eat, how we eat it, how we source it, thinking about freshness, quality,
Right.
nutrition, and focusing on whole foods?
Yes, definitely. And we have to look, you can't look at food in a vacuum. You have to look at food along with nutrition because, if you're eating food and it's not doing your body any good, then, what is the point? And so, unfortunately, we're spending a lot of money. The money is going out of the country in order to bring these imports in, and we're not getting the quality that we should have. So if something happens, as we already know, how are we going to eat? So I ask the listening audience now, if you could not get imported food stuff as of today, could you go into your yard and sustain yourself by eating something that you have in your yard? Would you be able to survive off the food? Like, remember those Gulliver's Travels or, being on an island, Gilligan's Island. Remember that
Yes.
years ago? When you're on an island, thank God for the coconut tree, because that will sustain you in so many different ways. So think to yourself, if that should happen, will I be able to find food to eat? And along with the nutritious situation, we talk about the burden of the direct health problems related to bad nutrition. And these are non-communicable diseases. And these are self-inflicted. We cause it on ourselves because we have poor eating habits and unhealthy lifestyles, and they are literally killing us. And the Bahamas, unfortunately, has some of the highest rates of overweight and obesity in the region and the world. And according to 2019 statistics, among Bahamian children ages 5 to 19 years, 35.8% are overweight or obese, and 17.3% are obese. Those are really frightening statistics.
Yes,
And we think of the ridiculously high percentage of Bahamian adults, of course, who suffer with high blood pressure and diabetes, which also correlate to heart disease, kidney disease, cancer, and other high mortality health issues. So we have become addicted to bad eating, and we've adopted this sedentary lifestyle, and we don't exercise. So what are we going to do to help ourselves? And this is all related to creativity because, we have to get back to basics and common sense because this is the way our ancestors lived. We have an expression, drop your bucket where you stand, and learn from your ancestors because the answers are looking us right in the face if we could only see what we're looking at, because food security in our day was a way of life because we had no choice. we had to grow our own food because very few foodstuffs came from away. And that happened throughout the archipelago of the Bahamas. And we also lived as a community, and very important word that we use all the time in Creative Nassau,
Yes.
because it means that we were helping one another. We were dependent on one another. We weren't dependent on foreign, but the person who's probably living right next to us. And we survived from the land and the sea because we had no other choice. And it was
Yeah.
hard. It was hard work, but it was necessary work. And working with our hands was also a fact of life. It was necessary for survival, and everybody did it. And there were skills in farming and fishing, and these also helped
Mhm.
to provide incomes. And produce was fresh, right from the field, right from the ground, and it was affordable, and it was sold at markets. The straw market was actually a food market in the day, or it was sold
Wow.
door to door. I remember as a child, yes, Savalita, there was a lady called Savalita. She was the fruit lady, the fruit and vegetable lady, and she would push a little cart all through the neighborhoods, and she would call out, Savalita, come in. So everybody would go out and get their fruits. And then the fishman came all the time, and he would say, "Fishman, fishman." He'd be riding his bicycle with the fish right on his bicycle, and you would go out and get your fish that way, or you would go to the market with your straw bag to get all your things from the market. So it was a way of life, and every family planted their own garden, and they had vegetables and herbs of their own. So they were
Lovely.
cooking outside and picking at the same time, picking their time right off the ground to throw in the pot. And
Yes. Yes.
so that was important because not only was it healthy from the food point of view, but it's healthy from a social point of view, when you work as a
Absolutely.
community. So it
Yes.
was good mental health as well, because you had a family all around you at all times. And so we learned to be independent when it came to food, and we learned to share with one another. And that was always very important, because if you killed a sheep or a goat, no Frigidaire. So you had to share it with the neighbors because there was no way for you to keep it. So that was very important, to pool and share your talents and resources.
Yes, and thank you so much for that backstory, Mrs. Burnside.
Mm-hmm.
You have been able to show us a lot of Bahamian history, the
Mm-hmm.
things that you would have grown up with, and a lot of the other generations. I
Right.
remember with one of my grandmothers, she would make all of the different suits on a regular
Oh,
basis,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and she would send us out into the yard, and
Right.
we would get the fresh peas, take
Right.
them out the shell. We would
Mm-hmm.
pick the different herbs, and this is
Right.
something that we knew. We knew about
Right.
okra and
Mm-hmm.
other forms of produce, fresh
And all the
potatoes.
ground, yeah, all the cassava and
Yes,
yams, all very
yes,
nutritious
cassava,
food. And
absolutely.
and there were always fruit trees in every community. There were
Yes,
fruit
I grew
trees.
up
So
with
you
fruit
you never
trees.
you didn't go hungry because you could climb a
Mhm.
tree. And here in the Bahamas, there was always some fruit in season. And so you always had something to eat. And I was a good climber. We had lots of fruit trees. My maternal grandfather was a farmer. So my mother planted many trees in our yard. We had all sorts of fruits in our yard. And so I grew up sitting in the plum tree, or the grapefruit tree, or the orange tree, just picking and eating. It was
Yeah,
just amazing. And we think about it, they were fruit trees, and they cost us nothing except some
very true.
manners to say, "Please, Miss Burnside, can I get some of your fruit?" You didn't go into people's yard and thief it. You had to ask, and they would very easily share with you, because that was the way of the community. And when you think how many children today put a native fruit in their lunch bag, they want grapes, they want apples, they don't want dilly, they don't
Commercial
want
product.
tamarind, and that's
Yeah.
ridiculous, because you could literally pick them off the tree. And in fact, how many children today know what a pigeon plum is? Have they eaten dilly? Do they know about native cherries and mammy and 7-year apple? How
Yes.
many people know that? And they cost you nothing, because you would pick them off your tree. So you know
Yes.
how nutritious they were, and you think,
Absolutely.
so
And
it's
one
it's
of
so
the
important.
Yes. And one of the great things about this is you had mentioned farming, which has
Mm-hmm.
been one of the industries here in the Bahamas for an extremely long time. There are so
Right.
many different islands that are involved in it. And it's so great to know that there are different organizations and
Mm-hmm.
individuals who are connected to Creative Nassau. So these
Right.
are the persons that are taking the step, they're making a difference through agriculture, farming in different
Mm-hmm.
ways. They're bringing back what it feels like, what it's like to actually be able to get fresh, nutritious produce, whether that's vegetables or
Correct.
fruits, bringing them into the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, introducing them
Right.
into our daily lifestyles. So, can you tell
Mm-hmm.
us a bit more about the persons or organizations that are connected to this initiative?
Right. Well, I started by posting it on Facebook, and there were people that I knew that I just reached out to, and they were more than happy to send information on the things that they were doing when it came to agriculture. And so the response has been phenomenal. And what I want to do is just post that information online. And when you think of the amount of farmers markets that happen right here in Nassau, a lot of people have no clue. You know,
Mhm.
we have a market at Dungalik. A lot of people don't know that every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we have the Gladstone Market out west, and we got
Yes.
BAIC up here, up east now. They're open every day, selling all of the fresh produce from Bamsey. And they also just held a taste and tell event on the weekend for processors who are actually processing those fruits and vegetables and making jams and drinks and whatever. And then there's
Mhm.
people like Chick Charney Farms and Eden Farms and Down to Earth Farms and Hasty's Farms. And they even have schools. And I have to make a shout out to Hasina Johnson, who's doing a phenomenal job down there at CV Bethel, teaching students
Yes.
how to farm and sell their produce. I mean, it's just absolutely great. And some of the students have been interviewed and say they want to be a farmer just because they have this lesson down there, you know, and they're selling
Love
their
it.
produce, and it's so delicious and so fresh. And then you have people like Yolette Etienne at the Coconut Factory, who's using local coconuts and making everything you could think of for for you to eat, you know, and that's from coconut milk to cheeses. And there are lots of vegans out there. Those are people who eat no dairy, no meat, only green food that grows from the ground. And so everything you could think of, she makes it. And they're even putting coconut in different rums and things like that to make delicious ice cream. Those of you who are lactose intolerant, who can't drink cow's milk, you can eat this ice cream or drink this milk. It's absolutely delicious. And she's also
So,
making soil. Every part of the
yes,
coconut she
I've seen
uses.
that.
Yeah.
No
So
waste, zero waste.
it's no waste, no waste. And then there are many markets on the family islands, as we know, because they're still
Mhm.
living that lifestyle. And I recently came back from Eleuthera, where I had a great time down there talking to some of the people like Denise and Paul Worrell of Naturally Bahamian. They have a
Yes.
wonderful farm down there, and they also deliver produce for you. And pineapple season is upon us, so you have to put in your order early if you
Hey,
want
nice.
pineapples. And
Nothing like
then
being a good
there's
pineapple.
that's right. And then there's the One Eleuthera Foundation. They have a beautiful farm down there with Tim
Mhm.
and Salima
Yes.
Horber. And that's a great place to go. And they have such new technology happening right down there, which is, again,
Mhm.
why go to Dubai when, you know, literally half an hour away on the plane, you could go down to the One Eleuthera farm and find out what's going on down there. And they also have a farmers cooperative in Eleuthera where they've gotten all of the
Mhm.
farmers together and they're doing things. I'm selling one of their fundraising calendars in the gallery right now that tells you when to plant what every month. It tells you what to
Nice.
plant. Yeah, and then we have the Bahamas Tourism and Hotel Association, who's doing some work now on examining direct supply chain linkages between the farmers and the hotels and the chefs. And I know when I went to Guyana, and a lot of us go to Jamaica, they have nothing on their table is imported. All of their fruits, all of their vegetables, they grow right there. And that's where we need to move, I think. And we have all of these hotels and cruise ships bringing in their food from away. There should be a way for everybody who is farming to be able to make a living by supplying all of these people that we have here in the country. And, when you talk about the wastage, again, there's ways that you could actually make use of that. You could, in your neighborhood, let's go down to BAIC and let's get a box of pumpkins. And then you share it between the neighborhood, that way your money could stretch. And that's something as well that you want to use to process. Don't waste the food. Don't throw it away. Recycle it. Put your vegetables back in the ground and make your compost and make your mulch. Or take your green waste down to the new ecology park and let them turn that into compost and mulch. That's right. Yeah. So once you have living things from the point of view of food, then you could regenerate again by you can't have good food unless you have good soil, and the best soil is made from the mulch and the compost. So, don't throw those rotten tomatoes out. Start a compost heap, and that way you're going to get what you call real black gold. It's going to break down. It's nature's way. We have it right there. All we have to do is to understand and utilize it to our benefit.
Yes, and you've touched on so many great points, Ms. Burnside, and I was going to ask, how can persons get involved? But you have already mentioned quite a few, being able to create their own compost, being able to do backyard gardening. Also, you mentioned the boxes, and I must agree with you, those boxes from the local farms really do give you bang for your buck, a lot of value. When you think of Bamsey with their $20 box, Down to Earth has their box. I saw I Discover as well. We have quite a bit of variety, and each one has the seasonal parts of it, as you mentioned. So they produce based on the season, so you're getting just the right stuff, and you can share those things. I normally do that with my family. So like with my aunt, I know she loves cassava. It's something that I grew up with. Also with my brother and with my little sister, I'm like, hey, I have extra tomatoes here, extra onions, sometimes let's kind of like switch it up. And I just said it's about community, building and also supporting the concept of a community. We are all here. We are on the same piece of soil. We can work together. We can support those that are providing nutritious, whole, healthy foods. And we can make better choices, not just for ourselves, but also for our family members, for our loved ones. Being able to showcase what we have here in the Bahamas when it comes to farming and making better decisions. So is there a way, because I know you're going to post it and that will help persons to understand this initiative a lot more, but is there a way that persons can become more involved in this initiative, whether it's an individual or a business?
Right. Well, the basic thing is, and one definitely good thing that came out of COVID is people started backyard farming. And I have to say kudos to the Ministry of Agriculture, because they were giving out those $10 farming boxes to get people interested. And that was very, very important, because a lot of people went back to the soil, like the old people used to say. And so we can all play a part in, as individuals and families and communities and the country, by supporting our own. So those were just some of the markets that I talked about. Make sure you go out and support them. Put your money where your mouth is and help them, because a lot of our farmers, they toil very hard, and it is unconscionable, as my mother would say, to let food go to waste. We would have to peel and pick guavas from now until thy kingdom come to put in the freezer, because if they dropped on the ground, she did not want them to just be thrown away. We had to pick and peel, make jam, put them in the fridge until it's time to make jam. So we can all do our own. An important thing when it gets back to food is to protect our environment. We have to save our trees
Yes.
and save our forests, especially our native plants, and get rid of all the invasive ones. And we have to protect
Mm-hmm.
our oceans and our fresh water and our land from pollution. And a lot of that is happening these days. So we have to be
Mm-hmm.
very aware of what is going on. And, you could imagine how much food is in our oceans. And I think of the fishers these days who, when I was growing up, there was all sorts of frying fish. Easter just
Mm-hmm.
came past us, and where the goggle eyes, that was a staple for Easter. Some of the fishermen don't even know what a goggle eye is. They will not fish for that. They want to fish for the lobster and the conch because all of them are being exported out of the country. But what is that
Mm-hmm.
doing for our own? How are we going to protect our own foodstuffs for ourselves if we're going to be exporting it? When it comes down to money, that's not going to do you any good because you can't eat the money when you're barely hungry. You have to be sensible about it. So, we have to make sure when we talk about all the poaching happening, when we're losing our reefs, which all goes back to the fact that if we don't have reefs, we won't have fish, we won't have food to
All
eat.
connected.
So, all
Mhm.
it's all interconnected. It's all about nature. And so, I would advise everyone learn about backyard farming. Even if you just plant one peas tree in your yard, you buy peas from the food store, soak one of them dry ones for a couple of days till it swell up, and plant a couple of them. I'm sure you will have a peas tree. Come Christmas, you'll have green peas that you're picking out of your yard to put in your peas and rice for Christmas dinner. That's so important.
Lovely.
It's so important. So a lot of
Yes.
our farmers, a lot of our farmers are getting older. I'm glad, like I said, with CV Bethel, for instance, they're actually showing the young people that they can make a living out of farming. And so we get
Very
more young
important.
people entering the profession. That's very important. And you think of the poultry and the animal farming, that's of course declining. We're importing all
Mm-hmm.
our meats again. And plant food, not lawns. A lot of our older people would say, what, you can't eat grass. What you planting grass for? Plant food. We don't need no lawn. So fruit trees are very, very important. I mean, I'm surrounded by fruit trees. I love my fruit and vegetable gardens, and you're not going to be able to just grow right away. Look to
Mm-hmm.
your friends, look to people who do gardening, and ask them to help you. We share plants. I just gave a couple pigeon pea plants to one of my friends the other day, and I took some dillies to another friend the other day. So share.
Nice.
That's the whole point of community.
Yes.
And know
Yes.
your native foods and know your native fruits so that you could eat them. They're certainly more healthy and they're delicious and they're fresh. So
Yes.
take the time to educate yourself, join a gardening club online, or go out to them so that you could collect, learn how to process your jams and your jellies, how to make jams and jellies so you don't waste your fruit. And
Important.
encourage, yep. And I'm glad to know that the hoteliers are now looking at a crop calendar, and they're going to be
Mm.
working with the chefs and the farmers so that they will actually be buying fresh produce from them. We got to say a shout out to Suzanne Patouche at BHTA for getting that all going. And I have to say thank you to the feeding networks during this pandemic, and basically because they feed thousands of Bahamians every day, and people like Hands for Hunger who collect all of that excess food and are able to distribute it to the feeding networks and to many families who do not have nutritious food to eat. And we
Yes.
have to encourage our wholesalers also, if they have excess food, to give it to the feeding networks as well. And as I say, make soil, make compost, make mulch from your food and your plant waste, because think of how much soil we import into the country. We import foreign soil, and what bugs are we importing in that soil when we could be doing it
Point of
ourselves
emphasis.
using our own plants, so it's
Mm-hmm.
safer to do that. And when you think about all of the industries that are revolve all around food and the green economy, there are so many
Mm-hmm.
ways you can make a living. So young
Yeah,
people, don't be afraid to make your hands dirty. You know,
there you
you'll
go.
be having green. Green brings green when it comes to to food and
Good
money.
point.
On
Yes, thank
exercise.
you.
Yeah,
Yes.
exercise. And that's for free too. We could walk, we could swim. We got this sea all around us. We could go out swimming, we could walk, and you would eat healthy. And that way you'll keep yourself healthy as well and cut down on those fast foods and, the junk food that's all around. And the last thing I want to say is save the bees because my daughter and I are beekeepers. And don't call the
Okay.
exterminator, call the beekeeper because bees are at the top of the food chain. And without bees, there will be no food because they pollinate all of our food. So please do not kill the bees. Call the beekeepers. Someone will be more than happy to come out there. And there are lots of swarms going on now. Bees whose nests are too full, they're going to move themselves and find another place to go to. So that's when you see a whole
Mm-hmm.
clump of bees together. Don't get worried. Call the beekeeper and they'll be able to move those bees and give them a nice home in a lovely box to make some more honey. And again, that's all good for you. And you could even train to be a beekeeper because Shakara Lightburn of our beekeeping swarm group on WhatsApp, Shakara at islandfoodology.com. She's having a Bahamas Bee College from May the 23rd to June the 1st. So, check her out if you're thinking about being a beekeeper. It's so much fun. I'm already signed up for the advanced course for
Awesome.
her. So, we hope there's so much you could talk about food. And I'm glad that you're going to be continuing the conversation. But basically, we started the initiative not to because we're not involved with food directly, but we're involved with thinking, creativity, and making sure that we have economic empowerment for our people and keeping them healthy. So we really planted the seed with this initiative, and we're marketing it to the public so that it will germinate in food jargon and take root in the country and bring forth a fruitful harvest. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think you're off to an amazing start. There are
Thank you.
so many different sectors that are
Hmm.
involved. And as you said, they were so excited to be able to share things that they've already done to
Right.
bring this way of eating, this way of
Hmm.
living, this way of thinking back into the Bahamian society as the norm.
Right.
And I
Hmm.
appreciate the fact that you mentioned how much of a difference people looked at food when it came to the pandemic. As you stated, there was this
Hmm.
huge surge of backyard farming. There were
Right.
businesses that came up
Hmm.
and they were offering ways to actually set up different boxes around your home, helping you to
Right.
start gardening with your herbs and your
Hmm.
produce. And
Hmm.
because people had to stop and think, how am I going to get food? They were so used to going into the food stores,
Right.
being able to have
Hmm.
access and availability, and then came the shortages.
Right.
Things that were happening around the world, and it was, you know what? I have to step back and realize that I have
Hmm.
to take accountability,
Right.
more mindfulness when it comes to food, and they understood the urgency at the time.
Hmm.
And so I
Hmm.
applaud the individuals that did that, also the organizations that stepped up to provide. I wanted to mention, as you stated, with Hands for Hunger and the Feeding
Hmm.
Network, there
Right.
was also the Lord's Kitchen, which provides over 1,000 meals a day within the
Hmm.
community that's located on West Street.
Wow.
So there were so many persons that have continued to give, continued to be
Hmm.
present because they understand the value of food security and food
Right.
sustainability in the Bahamas. And so you have planted
Hmm.
so many seeds. They have already started to sprout all about.
Wonderful.
I can't wait to feature the persons that have become a part of that. They've joined it and they want to share their story. They want to talk about the advancements in agricultural practices and
Hmm.
the ways that we can change how we interact with food, our relationship with them. Um, and so it's been a lot. It's a lot. And everyone, I want you to just really take away from this that it is all about how we see, source, and access food, and we can make a difference. So please take in mind the tips that Mrs. Burnside has mentioned tonight. Even if you just take one, there were so many, there's at least one you can do. And know that by doing that, you are participating in the Food for Thought 2 for 2 initiative. Every small step counts.
Right. And feel free to send it to me. I'll be more than happy to post it on all of our Facebook pages so that they can go all around the world.
Exactly. We want to share the message all the way out there. So, Mrs.
Oh, yeah.
Burnside, thank you to you and Creative Nassau for this impactful national initiative that gets us to stop, think, be more proactive about our food, where we source it, whether it's in our backyards, supporting the community, supporting our local farmers, going to the farmers market, and also thinking about with our kids. We are teaching them our history and our culture by being
Right.
able to give them a piece of the food that we source on a regular basis. It's not
Right.
just about what am I eating? Okay, it's a mango or it's a lime or
Mm.
a sour orange, which some persons
Mm-hmm.
may not know, but it's knowing that it's created here in the Bahamas.
Right.
I can do that for myself. It's found on other
Mm-hmm.
islands, and it's something that you can connect with and know that you're eating and knowing a part of Bahamian history.
Mm-hmm.
It's also changing how we produce our foods, keeping in mind ways to keep it fresh, sustainable, also seasonal, only eating
Mm-hmm.
what is to be made in this particular season. It is certainly one with long term positive benefits to our health and helps us to secure a better future through food. We thank you for sharing your insight and also tips on how we can be involved in creating or seeking more sustainable food for ourselves, our family, and our community. To connect with Mrs. Burnside at Creative Nassau, to learn more or become a part of this initiative and get your message out, because she will share it, you can call her at 394-1886 or via email at pam.burnside@doongalik.com. And she's also on Facebook.
Yes.
Our episode tonight is sponsored by local artisan skincare line Amber L, who encourages you to nourish your everyday skin glow. And a special thank you to our audience tonight for watching and to our guest speaker. If you're just tuning in or you've only watched half of the show, you can watch the full replay on this page. We thank everyone for watching and encourage you to tune in next week where we raise your frequency and amplify your truth. Have a good night.
Thanks
Thanks,
so much.
everyone.
Good
You're
night.
welcome.